Now, we left the Admiral Graf just after Captain Hans Langsdorff ordered the successful capture of the British cargo ship Newton Beach. Before the German raider could capture the Newton Beach, the cargo ship had sent out a distress signal, which really didn't seem to be of much concern to Langsdorff. Because the signal was so weak, it was extremely unlikely anyone would actually pick it up. Now, the next day, the Graf float plane, Narado 196, didn't spot a ship within 300 miles of the Graf, so Langsdorff decided to head southeast along the Freetown, Cape Town, and Freetown trade routes. By October the 7th, the Graf was almost in the Gulf of Guiana, and at 8:24 in the morning, smoke had been spotted on the horizon, southwest of the ship. Langsdorff would order action stations and to have a boarding party to stand by, along with having the Newton Beach's German prize crew warned of the possible oncoming threat. The oncoming ship was the steamer Ashlia, carrying 7,200 tons of sugar from Durban to Freetown. She was going to meet up with a convoy that was headed back to Europe. The captain of the Ashlia, because of the oncoming ship's outline, he thought it was either the Dunkirk or the Strasbourg, but the Graf continued to approach at a rapid pace until she and the Ashlia were a quarter of a mile apart, and the Graf signaled to heave to, I am sending a boat across, and don't use your radio or we will fire. And then the German ensign was raised. The captain of the Ashlia, instead of chucking the confidential books overboard, he decided to burn them in the furnaces to be extra sure that they would not fall into the hands of the Germans. After the German boarding party came aboard, he told the captain and his men that he had 10 minutes to leave their ship, to which they were transported to the Newton Beach. The Graf would go on to sink the Ashlia, but not before taking some of the Ashlia's sweet cargo on board their own ship. The Graf would alter course and begin to head northward, with the Newton Beach following her. But this cargo ship became too much of a hassle, as it was slowing the Graf down, which was really an issue because the Graf mobility was one of the ship's most valuable assets. By the next day, Langsdorff had made up his mind. He would sink the Newton Beach and risk overcrowding the Graf with prisoners. After taking off the crew and prisoners, scuttling charges were set to explode at 6:12 p.m. and did so, but the Newton Beach didn't go down until 11:47 because of the maize cargo. The Graf would continue northwestward and then west. On the 9th, another course correction towards the southeast was made, where on the 10th of October, smoke was spotted again. As the Graf came into the usual bow-on maneuver they'd been pulling before, Langsdorff realized that this vessel was a bit bigger than the rest, but like previous encounters, a boarding party was sent aboard. The ship in question turned out to be the 8,196-ton SS Huntsman, with a crew of 84 aboard. The Huntsman got off a distress signal, but it seemed that the signal had not been reached by anyone, as it was an off period, so no one was there to respond. Langsdorff was in a tough position here with this new steamer. He was already full of prisoners, so it would have been really tough to sink it. Instead, he decided to do something clever with the ship. Langsdorff, realizing that his previous sinking of the Clement and believing by this point that the crew would have to have been rescued, wanted to throw off any pursuers by sending out a fake distress signal, as the Huntsman and the other ships that Langsdorff had captured would surely have been reported overdue. Langsdorff sent out a fake distress signal indicating that the Huntsman had been hit by a torpedo, implying that it was a German U-boat. Feeling rather happy with his deception, Langsdorff then ordered the Graf and the Huntsman along with them southwestward. The following day on the 11th, the Graf radio men intercepted a transmission saying that HMS Ajax had been refueled in Rio de Janeiro, but this was of no consequence to the German cruiser, as that was nearly 1,800 miles away. What was of concern at the moment was the fact that it had come time to meet up with the Altmark at the next rendezvous point on the 14th. Langsdorff ordered the Huntsman ahead to an alternative rendezvous, which would enable the Graf when meeting with the Altmark to refuel and then return northward to find the slower steamer. On the 12th, after notifying the prize crew of the Huntsman of his intentions, the Graf radar gear broke down due to the vibrations which affected the power cables. That evening, Langsdorff received a long message which discussed the movement of capital ships from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. If that wasn't worrying enough to Langsdorff, the next day would see increased radio traffic between British stations along the African coast. He worried that his presence had finally been discovered with his sinkings and captures of vessels, and figured the British would have increased their protective measures along the Cape Town-Freetown trade route, which would make the islands of St. Helena and Ascension Islands very enticing forward bases for any British ships in the area. With this in mind, Langsdorff decided he needed to make a change of plans. Langsdorff made the decision that he would refuel with the Altmark, transfer the prisoners to the tanker, and then return to the Huntsman, retrieve the prize crew, and then sink it. The waiting area would shift westward clear of the hostile waters of the Cape Town, St. Helena, Ascension, Freetown route, meaning the cruiser would be free to use its maneuverability without having to worry about the fear of the merchant ship slowing them down. The following day at 8:24, the Graf would spot and rendezvous with the Altmark, where they would send prisoners over to the Altmark and then begin fueling, which would take a considerable amount of time, or the Graf Spee would not be able to get on the move till the following day, because Langsdorff wanted full tanks, since he wanted the full 6 weeks they would provide before having to rendezvous with the Altmark. Now, at this point, Langsdorff began a plan to break out back to Germany, because with the state of the engines being less than ideal, along with other equipment starting to show signs of wear and tear, the idea of a return to Germany would be sometime in January. But nevertheless, that was several months out, and they had to get back to the task at hand, which was convoy raiding southeast of St. Helena. A little later on in October, the Graf Spee received a message from Germany saying that they were to meet up with 2 German ships coming from Chile and Mexico respectively, who had more supplies for the German cruiser. By October 22nd, the Graf Spee arrived southeast of St. Helena, using secret trade routes from a captured merchantman. That morning, the Graf Spee spotter plane spotted smoke on the horizon and gave the ship's course, approximate speed, and her position. Then shortly after heading back to the Graf Spee would give chase, and Langsdorff would approach bow on, ran up the flag when close in on the steamer, and gave the flag signal, "Heave to, I'm sending a boat." And then, "Do not transmit or I will open fire." This time it would be the 5,229-ton steamer Trevenon, which was coming from Port Pierre carrying concentrates. Captain Edwards of the Trevenon quickly ordered a distress signal sent out. After finding this out, Langsdorff quickly ordered the Trevenon's bridge and upper deck to be fired on with machine guns. None of the crew aboard the bridge were injured. Edwards had just enough time to throw the secret papers overboard before the German party came aboard, to which the crew got the same treatment as the previous ones, getting 10 minutes to gather belongings before they would be forced into lifeboats, then taken to the Graf Spee. The Trevenon was sunk with scuttling charges a little while after. On the 23rd, another ship was spotted using the Arado 196, to which the Graf Spee altered course to intercept this other ship. However, after following the ship's trail, the Graf Spee couldn't seem to find this elusive merchant ship. There's only one explanation from this. The ship had spotted the Arado 196 and figured it belonged to the German raider and altered course, along with radioing the British of this sighting. In fear of this, Langsdorff ordered the Graf Spee to alter course at full speed, which would be the first time in weeks. While this was going on, Langsdorff was nervously waiting to see if any radio traffic would come through about news of the Graf Spee, but no news was heard about the ship. That night, however, Langsdorff sent a signal to request that the Altmark move the rendezvous 600 miles to the west, of which the 2 ships met on the 28th of November, where the Graf Spee refueled and the crew of the Trevenon were taken over to the Altmark. This is where we'll leave the Graf Spee alongside the Altmark. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm really enjoying making this series.